Callum Shepherd, David Egan, Jonathan Harding alongside me for this week's Talking Points, and a nice rich variety as well. I think, Jonathan, it's important we start with Cheltenham because the consumer experience there has been scrutinised perhaps more than anywhere else in the sport. What were you encouraged or discouraged by as far as what Guy was saying?
Yeah, I think you're right, absolutely, that the experience is scrutinised more than any other. I think most people have been broadly quite encouraged by the changes that have been made. It's just whether you think they go far enough, whether it's, I think it might be window dressing from one corner.
I mean, the price of a pint thing, it gets the headline, but as Guy was saying, it's not really the germane point, is it? It's the intent of the racecourse to not rip customers off. Agreed,
yeah, and it's about the narrative. It's very easy for it to... The idea, somebody goes, Cheltenham's very expensive, and it gathers momentum, and even if the experience does actually tally with the costs, I don't think they're a million miles off in terms of actually getting in and the costs when you're in there. You know, it can gather momentum to the point where people decide it's too expensive before they've even looked at the price. So I think it's quite proactive that they've come out and done this.
Would you guys go as racegoers?
I would go.
Yeah.
I would go, yeah.
And when you go as, you know, because we were talking earlier in the week, you know, we're there working. It's very hard for us to kind of understand the customer experience properly, but it's not that hard for you, especially when you've got a little bit of time off, going somewhere like Cheltenham or Ascot Sand in the winter.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been to the Cheltenham Festival in about 10 years, but I used to go a lot with my parents. I love the place. It's an amazing amphitheatre for racing. It's a great, I think going is an incredibly good experience, and like you say, I think the intent is the key thing. Is just as long as people don't feel like they're getting the Mickey taken out of them, that goes a long way, I think.
It's I think $19 for a beer at the Riders' Cup this week. Did I just say Riders' Cup? I don't know what's wrong with me this morning. At the Ryder Cup this week, David. It does put it in perspective, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's all perception. If you feel like you're getting... If you don't feel like you're getting ripped off, whether it's 50p or £5 or £19, whatever it is, it's all perception, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Right. We're going to move on. Try and wake up. This is Aidan O'Brien talking yesterday about the future of Delacroix.
It's possible. It depends on what the lads want to do again. He seems to have come out of the race well, and everything has went well in all the few little bits he has done so far. But obviously what will happen is I'd imagine we'll have a good chat with the lads kind of 10 days before the race, out 2 weeks, and we'll have a look at the lads will probably have a look at the forecast and see then. Like, obviously he's very important to get back to Coolmore, this horse, and especially now obviously when Wootton Bassett is gone. Yeah, they'll decide, but at the moment it's positive, I think.
Positive to maybe go to Ascot?
I think it's positive, but that's not written in stone by any space of imagination, and they will decide, and we won't. The lads know that we're wondering, but we won't ask until they tell us. And if he's finished, he's finished. So if anything negative comes between now and then, we'll let him know. And because horses this time of the year can go on and off, and he has been busy all year, but so far everything looks good so far.
And would you entertain the QE2 as well as the Champions? Would you entertain dropping to a mile just to give him that extra string to his stallion bow? Not necessarily that he needs it.
Yeah, that'd be their decision as well, and it always is a possibility, because Ryan always reckoned that he was quick, and we see every day that he is quick, and he does quicken very well. So they'll decide that as well, what they want to do, and if he was going there. But obviously he's in the 2 races, and we'll try and get him to go there first, and then if we're going there, then we'll see which race the lads want to run in.
And isn't this the part in the movie that we've been in about 20 times before, where I ask you if you'd entertain a Breeders' Cup Classic with him?
Yeah, no, listen, he's like I say, he's a very important horse. He's had a tough year, and there is a time when you push a horse too long, too much sometimes, you know. So listen, like I say, it won't be my decision, but if we see where we're going the next time first, and then see what the lads want to do, really.
All right, one step at a time. Well done, Aidan.
Yeah, thanks, Lou.
You got there. It's Nick.
Thanks very much, Nick. Sorry. Thanks, Nick.
Well, it never does you too well to think you've made it at this game. Aidan O'Brien most definitely has, by the way. But David Egan, how do we bet Delacroix appearing again? He dangled it again.
Yeah, he'll be prepared as if he's definitely going, and then it's just a case of whether the powers that be make the decision or not. But he's obviously very important for Coolmore now, especially after the passing of Wootton Bassett. They're looking for the next horse to take that next step, and I presume they're hoping Delacroix could do it someday, but he's got a long way to go. But he's a terrific racehorse. What he did at Leopardstown was mightily impressive, and the turn of foot he showed, and for his stallion prospects, back to a mile probably could make him worth even more.
Yeah, and I know we've got to be prepared to buy into the idea that he is going to run again, because that kind of keeps the whole thing vital. After Leopardstown, I thought Aidan pretty much suggested that that was definitely going to be game over. And now I'm feeling the
door's ajar, isn't it?
Well, I don't know whether it is or not, but I'm feeling more... was I being asked to feel a bit more positive about it yesterday? What do you think?
I think I'm like you. I want to be positive about it. I want to get excited about this horse. I'm desperate to see him take on Ombudsman again. I just think... But the heart says, please run, and that's the kind of sporting decision. But then the reality of it is he is so important, and they might just say it's not worth the risk. It
could just be another chapter in the nice little bit of byplay between Aidan O'Brien and John Gosden, couldn't it?
Yeah.
So he's and suggesting that QE2 is a possibility. There will either be Ombudsman or Field of Gold.
Yeah, you'd love the trilogy to be completed. Ombudsman versus Delacroix. Ballydall are at their core competitors, so they must want to run. But obviously, it's probably heart and head sort of. Perhaps the sort of heart and head sort of discussion they're obviously having. How much?
I mean, given that he's got the physique, the pedigree, the performance, the Group 1s, and the sort of daddy Group 1s, if you like, the Eclipse, the Eclipse and the Irish Champion Stakes, does it matter if he runs now and gets defeated, as long as the defeat's not an absolutely disastrous one?
I don't think.
Does it matter to his stud value? I don't know.
Didn't devalue Galileo eventually, did he, when he got beat?
I think the Breeders' Cup Classic's a free hit, isn't it? A little.
Yeah, that's probably fair. That's a fair comment. When it's home soil, it's probably more relevant regards to that. But he's probably done enough to prove himself. I don't know if they're going to get behind him and they see him, they obviously see him, take him so seriously in that regard. Others will probably do well to follow, regardless.
And of course, that salient point that you both made is that there's some big boots to fill now, and they're the boots of Wootton Bassett, who they were able to cover the Galileo mares with. I wonder how his shoes might be filled, but I also pause to reflect on what an extraordinary story it was that a horse who was just a decent racehorse, albeit a Group 1 winner, went from being a 5,000 or 6,000 cover to being the world's most wanted stallion and purchased from his previous owners for a staggering sum of money by Coolmore, who probably got it all back in spades.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? And you don't always get these rags to riches tales. It's big money and breeding, and usually the big guys win. So to have a kind of...
Well, they did.
They did eventually, but you know what I mean, in the sense that, to have a stallion go from that position to being bought by Coolmore and then delivering in the way that he delivered, that probably took even Coolmore by surprise, the heights that he was able to reach.
How many of them would you lads have ridden? You'd have ridden quite a few, wouldn't you? Well,
Bucanero Fuerte.
Yeah.
And obviously, I didn't ride him on the race, but for Ammo Racing, King of Steel was a big flag bearer for Wootton Bassett at the time.
And that's the interesting contrast, isn't it? Super fast horses and middle distance horses as well. 6
furlong horses, the perfect stallion, can produce any type of horse. But yeah, he'd be sadly missed. He was tremendous. The rise he came from, as you said, a couple of thousand to a couple of hundreds of thousands. But that's the thing. So it's all very well to say a horse like Delacroix can slide into the void, but he's going to be a first season sire. He's unproven yet. I wondered if maybe they'd consider bringing Justified a stand in Ireland for a bit, given that he's now had a Guineas winner, a Derby winner, and a Leger winner, and do that. But
there are worse ideas, yeah.
There are possibly worse ideas, aren't there?
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, there you are. Just a thought. Wootton Bassett we lost this week at the age of 17. He will be very sadly missed, and I know by all the people who looked after him, both in Tipperary and indeed in Australia, where he sadly had to be put down. Right, the jumps starts we're going to concentrate on now. There is a new rule from the BHA, Jonathan. Just explain what it is and why it is supposed to benefit punters.
Well, it's given stewards the power to declare a horse a non-runner if the start is compromised in jumps races for any reason other than their own behaviour. So for a punter, if your horse is, if they whip round, okay, then that's their decision not to race. But if there's a reason, maybe they're facing the wrong way or it's to do with the way that the start was carried out, it's a non-runner, therefore you get your money back. Now,
a slight problem here is that you can still be declared a non-runner if you actually run in the race.
Yeah, and that was the question that flagged up to me, because they say that if the horse is compromised at the start and then goes and wins, obviously they're not going to be declared a non-runner. There's an element of subjectivity to this, an element of common sense, would you believe? But if the horse still runs and finishes a nose second or something, it's unclear whether they would they still be a non-runner because they didn't win?
This is the issue, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean,
but it's a tricky one, and it's so subjective, and it's sort of putting that decision in the steward's hands. I think it's a case where it's so rare that it's probably going to flag up once and we'll all be irate about it. I don't think it will happen every week, I hope.
I mean, I think my issue with it is that you had something that was black and white, even if on occasion punters would be so incensed they would find it unsatisfactory, or that it would be called racing's day of shame or disgrace or whatever, or can't these people start a horse race properly? This is supposed to be the 21st century, etc. But that would happen relatively rarely. Now you are actually introducing a grey area where there was not a grey area before.
Yeah, I think it's well-intentioned, but equally I'm quite sympathetic to it was Chris Cook's view in the Racing Post that I would be of the opinion that, well, if I'm placing the bet in a jumps race, there is the chance that that would happen, and it might be simpler to say, I've lost my money, that's really unfortunate, but that's kind of the deal I went into when I backed that horse. These things happen in jumps races.
Would you agree with that, David, that there is a certain degree to which jump racing has that little bit of extra jeopardy anyway, and if you have a start, things can go wrong? Or is this ultimately a good thing for the punters?
I don't think it's a good thing. I think it opens up a grey area. As a football fan, I preferred football when there was no VAR. It was referee's decision, linesman's decision. That's it. You got some right, you got some wrong. The general scheme of things, it all leveled itself out, whereas this is just could get messy. And it won't be messy until the first couple start arising and they start comparing. As you said, if one horse, two exact same scenarios, one horse finishes last, one horse finishes second, do you let the horse that finishes second run? The horse that finished last declared a non-runner? Or then what happens if one of these situations that the horse that probably should have been a non-runner at the start ends up going to win the race? It's a can of worms.
You'll get rule fours and you know this will happen in a big betting race on television, on ITV on a Saturday.
It's all down. This must all be linked to the start at Cheltenham, really. I mean, that must be
that's your area
crux
of greatest jeopardy, isn't it?
Yeah. God, how often do you watch Cheltenham? You just go, let them go, and they never. You know, obviously the starters have a really tough job and they're following protocol.
Do you find yourself shouting that?
Yeah. The starts at Cheltenham are a farce, aren't they? Like, it feels like it would be so much simpler if they were sort of left to their own devices. What they sort of fit. Surely they'd be cleaner. They didn't used to be like that, did they? You know, even 10 years ago, they didn't used to be like that.
I find it goes in fits and starts.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. But yeah.
That's obviously that's the crux of the issue. Is like the starts at Cheltenham, and this must have come in to cater for that.
Yeah. If you've got 24 runners, Jonathan, you've got one lined up right on the outside at Cheltenham, and then it kind of just jinks away from the tape, loses 7 or 8 lengths at the start. Now, if you back that horse, you've never had any chance. But to call the horse a non-runner?
Well, that would be their behaviour, wouldn't it?
Well, not if it was manifestly affected by the way that the start was carried out.
Yeah, but I think the length of time we've spent now debating it in a studio versus the stewards on the day when there's people queuing up to collect, or I think, again, well-intentioned. They're trying to tidy up the rules a little bit. I'm not against that as a principle, but sometimes these things, there's a bit of ironing out required, I'd say.
You're such a gent. That's the politest way anyone's ever told me to move on. But move on we will. Scandinavia won't be running in the Melbourne Cup. Now, it has not been officially released by Ballydoyle that he has failed the Racing Victoria veterinary protocols, nor has it been officially released by Racing Victoria that he's failed the Racing Victoria veterinary protocols, but he was in the middle of the vetting process when they decided to call the Melbourne Cup a day. So it is a reasonable inference to make that once again he has not satisfied the Racing Victoria panel. My apologies if that's not the case, but I feel it's a reasonable inference to draw. And once again, it means that the world's top trainer can't go to one of the world's biggest races with one of the most high-profile horses, therefore robbing the race of a bit of interest. Now, there was quite a lot said about this last year after Jan Bruegel, and again after he won the Coronation Cup this year, a lot of counsellors being kept this time round. It's a very difficult and thorny debate. It will rage on social media. There will people who will say that they've got it in for Aidan O'Brien. They don't have any evidence of that. And there are others who will say, well, the race's reputation is simply too important. Jonathan, what should we say about this?
I think that you sort of zoom out a little bit and you finished up there saying, well, it is just the race is being robbed of a good horse. That's the sadness here. You know, forget the toing and froing and whatever's going on behind the scenes. The fact that he's not running in the race as a racing fan is my chief concern, and that's disappointing. I think it's notable, and I'd take the same inference as you, that nothing has been said publicly, because I think last year it did become, pantomime's probably a bit harsh, but it did become a bit of a he said, they said, back and forth, a few sort of war of words, and I just think keeping the council is the right approach. For all, I would like clarity on...
This is it.
I'd love to know if that is the reason, and if it is, why has he not been allowed to run?
My issue with this, David, and it applies all across the world, and it's certainly not just an Australia-wide issue. When veterinary protocols deem that a horse is a non-runner, and it is a difficult area to explore, you know, we as the public, the racing public, the punters, want to have a greater understanding of the science behind it. We want to have a greater understanding as to, you know, what certain vets see that we might not see, that I might not see if I see a horse and he or she looks perfectly sound.
Yeah, like...
I think we want the sophistication.
Possibly. I just don't see the difference. Obviously, Scandinavia's been running all the year, hasn't put a foot wrong. What makes a young horse who's fresh and on the up say he's less fit to run than a 7 or 8 year old that'll be running down there, albeit mightn't have to travel over there, but what makes him less safe to run than the 3-year-old with probably less ailments, you could say.
And that's all about the interpretation of x-rays, isn't it?
Yeah, but you're never going to get a perfect x-ray on a horse. There's always going to be something that, a little shadow, you can pick flaws in anything. Do you think it's impossible to get a totally satisfactory x-ray on any horse? Well, it depends who looks at it.
Yeah.
It's perception, looking at a picture, isn't it?
And that's why I think our understanding, Callum, needs to be better in order for us to really figure out the situation properly.
Yeah.
We need to know more. We don't know enough.
Yeah, I don't feel well. I don't feel well informed enough to really It's how can you combat that argument? As I say, without sort of the backup knowledge to do so. So it's inevitably hard to fight these things if someone's formed their opinion from an X-ray. It is a real shame, really. You know, the race would be so much richer with the Aidan O'Brien's contingent running in it last year, this year. So it is a shame. It is a shame. Yeah.
Right, let's move on. We'll talk about the interference rules. This is where you guys come into your own because, again, and this has been going on all season, various trainers, various owners have been asserting that jockeys are being allowed enough latitude to ride sufficiently carelessly that they can cause interference without really fearing that either there's going to be any censure on them or that the horse is going to suffer by being disqualified. And Ed Walker made this case again this week in a 3-runner race at Goodwood, where his horse was carried across the track by a horse trained by Andrew Baldwin. Kieran Schumacher was on his horse, Oisin Murphy was on the winner, and the stewards left it alone. Ed was quite cross. He said it's dangerous, it's irresponsible, nothing gets done to the jockeys. They know nothing can get done, and they're quite happy to intimidate and manoeuvre, and it's only a matter of time before more people get hurt. So you guys are the best people to talk about this and the sort of general culture of race riding at the moment at the top level, and how it's developed and how you see it through your eyes. Yeah,
interference it's all down to the steward panel that's sitting there on the day. I think being a professional jockey, you got to know exactly what the rules are and what you can and can't do. And on the big days, you probably do see jockeys walking the line slightly. If you cross it, you risk losing the race or getting suspended. But I think there's an element of, the better you are, the better you know the rules, and the more you play on the edge a little bit.
Callum?
Yeah, it's sort of instances of interference. They can be varying, and you've obviously got one set of rules to try and discern between them. Ultimately, I think most well-informed people can spot what kind of looks wrong and right. You can understand Ed Walker's frustration. Mr. Riz got carried a long way off his line. It muddies the waters when they start crossing over to the far side, all that sort of thing. But ultimately was brought a long way over. But because Kieran had to check, ran out of room, he had no chance of getting it. Because if you're being a length and a half, you have got no chance. But the reason he was beaten that margin was because of the interference he suffered. So. I understand the frustration, and maybe they do need to tighten them up. Yeah, is it more? I mean, I was talking to Ed a bit more about this yesterday, and he's saying nobody wants to see all these jockeys banned. That's a disaster. But actually, the threshold for disqualification needs to be lower.
It depends on the country, doesn't it? How many times have you looked at interference in America, and the winner gets put back to last or behind the horse he interfered
though not anymore, because they're now starting to harmonise.
Exactly. Or some people might have an opinion, say, they might change that in France, but they wouldn't change that in Ireland, or vice versa. It's all a big conversation, isn't it? Everywhere is different. If it would be all the same rules everywhere in the world, wouldn't it be a lot easier?
But of course, if you knew, there's a bit of your mindset that knows you can get away with more, then you will just push that little bit closer to the edge, won't you?
I think it's my duty as a rider to try and do everything to win.
To win the race.
While still being safe, but play by the rules and ride on the edge, because that's what elite athletes do.
And can you be on the edge and be safe at the same time?
It depends on the circumstance, but I think you can.
Of course, yeah. There's a fine line, and when it crosses that line, then it's the reaction. People know pretty well when they've crossed the line, and people would make them aware of that. The thing, if I'm she in this situation, for him to completely stop and correct his horse, he's essentially forfeiting the race. Don't necessarily want to see that either. So it's. I
mean, this is only one example that happens to have been discussed by one senior trainer this week. I mean, we could be having this conversation about, Joe blogs and Jackie blogs, every week of the year, couldn't we?
But this conversation has come up a couple of times this year already about different scenarios and whether or not horses should or shouldn't have got the race taken off them, or whether jockeys should have got suspended or not. It's all,
Frustration for me is with the whip rules are so clear now, and they made a really conscious effort to say, well, if you're over this number, then X, Y, and Z happens. But interference, which I think has more safety implications, is still so open to interpretation and is still so vague, ultimately, certainly relative to the whip rules. It strikes me they almost address those the wrong way around. Yeah. I think they need to have a look at interference.
The whip rules are clear except when they're not.
It's like I did. Ted Walsh said one time, a monkey can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's easy, whereas something happening, it's not as simple as that. It's a complicated matter.
Yeah. Okay, on to the Labour MPs, 100 of them, who've written to Chancellor Rachel Reeves ahead of the Labour Party conference, which takes place this week, asking her to adopt Gordon Brown's proposals to hike gambling tax significantly so that really important societal matters surrounding child poverty can be addressed by the government. Now, your newspaper, Jonathan, has said that this could be the death knell for betting shops. I mean, I would suggest that betting shops are gradually going to slip away anyway, so that's not a sustainable funding method for the sport. But clearly, this debate is intensifying by the week.
Yeah, that's the key takeaway, I think. Suggesting kind of betting tax hikes across the board would have an impact on betting shops, and through there you've got media rights, you've got levy. That's a hit to the sport. It's almost getting it from every angle at the moment, and the mood music and that sort of emotional argument of, well, we're going to tax bookmakers and therefore we're going to pay for these really important things over here. It's conflating the two and suggesting that one has to happen for the other. At the moment, it just feels a little bit like a slow-motion car crash, to be honest with you, the betting tax stuff. There is a recognition by Gordon Brown, and indeed in this letter, that racing should have some sort of special treatment when it comes to tax, or have some sort of carve-out. But to my mind, while that's a victory of sorts, it's a hollow one, because if bookmakers are being hit in other areas of their business, naturally they're going to have to rationalise, they're going to have to adjust their investment in racing as a product if they're getting hit over here in betting shops, in games of chance and what have you. I think it's naive to think, well, racing will just be left alone and we'll be fine, bookmakers will get a hit and everything will carry on as it was. That won't happen.
And to what extent do you think this is going to impact policy, or to what extent has policy already been decided? I'm surprised to not see more from the betting industry this week.
It's difficult, isn't it? Yeah, there's definitely been a push. It feels, this is just me speaking off the top of my head, but it feels to me as though since that racing strike, I've seen a lot more in the news from that sort of gambling, anti-gambling side of things. And those calls for the tax to be raised, and the putting together of, we raise tax and we can help children in poverty. I mean, nobody would say that's not something that should be done.
It's an extremely hard contention to argue.
It's a hard emotional argument, and when you're looking, if you're asking a member of the public in the street, are you happy with us taxing bookmakers so that we can feed children in difficulty? It's a no-brainer. It's more nuanced than that, but getting that nuance across is the challenge that racing has.
All right, those were this week's talking points.
Watch live racing now on racingtv.com.